Hello, my name's Louise Daines and I'm recording this presentation today to detail briefly how I would prepare the renewal policy for the Shepherd's Bush Housing Group. In your email to me, you've asked me to take into three key elements, basically managing the renewal, key information to gather for stakeholders, and what risk do you see for Shepherd's Bush Housing Group in the current market. So if I tackle first of all the timescale, so the managing the renewal process, I would say that roughly I would look at the renewal about 8 weeks in advance. You can't do it too far in advance because any claims that could happen 8 weeks before renewal will still be taken into consideration and could really affect any quotation that you receive. So I'd say about 8 weeks in advance. I'd gather all my information that I needed, so the risks itself, so I know that you've got 5,000 properties on your books, so the size of each individual property and what they're made up of, basically. So the construction, you know, how many timber frame properties you've got on your books, because timber frame we know is a much higher fire risk, and a lot of new builds in the last decade have been timber framed. You could have some grade 2 listed buildings, grade 1 listed buildings, conservation areas. These all affect claims and the risk itself because, you know, take for example a grade 2 listed building. If you have to rebuild that property in materials of that particular era, they are really hard to source and much more expensive to source and can be generally double the price of what you would pay, say, if you had to renew a roof and put new wooden structures in you know, in the property. So all them type of things have to be taken into consideration, you know, whether there's blocks of flats, whether there's lots of Victorian terrace houses, you know, so establishing what the risk that you're presenting to the insurer is. So, you know, in London there's a lot of old Victorian houses that are tree lined with poplar trees down the road, and they can cause a lot of issues with subsidence, tree roots in drainage, and how you know, they're maintained by Shepherd's Bush Housing Group, and you know, blocks of flats themselves, you know, how we would insure those. So do we deal with them on an excess loss basis? So if we have a block of flats that would cost say 2 million to rebuild, do we have an insurer that covers the first million, which would incorporate all the smaller claims, like a washing machine leak or something like that, and then we have a second insurer that would do the excess loss, so the second part for 2 million, which could save money. So it would be gathering all the information for all the properties, knowing what the risk is, so that we can then present it to an insurer, and that can, you know, the timescale for that can actually take, you know, a good couple of weeks, because an insurer will also want to know what the risk is, what type of cover that you're asking for, i.e. the excess loss, or you know, if you're looking for separate sum insureds or just a complete block, that would, you know, be something that you need to establish to be able to present. Another thing that an insurer would be asking for is the claims history. So you'd need to gather all the claims in the last 12 months, and you know, subsidence claims can go back, you know, they want that, you know, forever. So it's getting all your claims history all in a row, so that, you know, when an insurer is looking at the risk, if they've got any questions, you've already approached loss adjusters or you know, the previous insurer to make sure how it was settled and what precautions were put into place following the claim settlement. And whether that's going to pose any further risk for an insurer. All this information they will want to know, so you can, you know how much to present to an insurer for the quotation, and then if they come back, you've got that information at hand. So once you've established what the risk is, what the claims history is, how you want to cover the properties, what type of policies and sums insured for certain certain properties, you can then do a formal presentation to then go to a broker who can then present it to all the insurers that you're interested in, or who they see fit to approach, that can meet the needs of Shepherd's Bush Housing Group. So the next question is, what would the key information to gather for stakeholders? So I'm imagining that Shepherd's Bush Housing Group have a premium in mind. You know, what they've perhaps paid previously, what they're expecting it to increase by, and there's their expectations. So if quite a few new properties have been built or acquired, obviously that's going to affect the premium. So we take in index linking any new properties, and then the budget. So we take into consideration all the things that is expected to come back from insurers and for stakeholders to look at and decide, and how the risk is going to evolve over the coming 12 months. So the economic climate. So as you know, we're all aware that the COVID-19 is going to have a huge effect on the economic climate, and this is going to affect residents of how they look to submit claims, and all insurers are going to be much more cautious when looking at claims and the risks going forward. So I'd imagine there's going to be a lot more stipulations about fire protection, about home flooding, that type of thing, because if there's not much money coming into a household, somebody's lost their job or on reduced wages, can't get overtime, it's a known fact that fraudulent claims increase. So that the insurers are going to be looking, I would imagine, at putting certain conditions on policies, and the claims process itself is going to be a lot more stringent, for Shepherd's Bush Housing Group, and the way an insurer looks at dealing with a claim, and how we work with them on that. So that is something that we will need to take into consideration when we're looking at a renewal, to see whether we've got the right insurer dealing with our customers. I noticed that you have set up a program called Future 50, which looks amazing, and it's a way forward. So we need to look at an insurer to make sure that they're actually technically able to deal with the way that we want to streamline the business. So making sure that their data and technology and everything can deal with our IT, and that we're not going back to old times of paper files and dealing with it that way, because it makes it so much quicker if we can just pop an email or stream something through, rather than waiting for something to come in the post or that type of thing. So digitally, we need to be making sure that the insurer that we use has got the right technology to be able to deal with the way that we want to deal with things. We've also got to work out that the insurer that we choose is going to give our customers the right type of a service. So even though they may be technology-wise really good, the way that they deal with claims or deal with our policyholders, direct loss adjusters, that type of thing, they work a way that we're happy with, that us as a company are happy with how they deal with our customers directly. Obviously there will be some go-between to make sure that they are, but if their processes are different to what we expect, then that they may not be the right insurer, even though they may have a better premium, a better consideration, and obviously whether they can deal with the company of Shepherd's Bush Housing Group growing. So the developing of properties, the developing of properties can mean building on to certain properties, building works, that type of thing, you have to have like a contracts works policy. Can they cover that themselves, or who do they outsource it to? What restrictions would we have if we had to arrange that type of policy for, you know, a contracts works policy for developing properties? So all these sort of extra information that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at an insurer and whether they can cope with the type of requirements that would be required. I hope I haven't gone on too much, and I know that there's quite a lot of minute detail that goes into you know, preparing a renewal on this scale, and I've tried to cover it as briefly as I can. And I haven't really even touched on compliance and what timescales are expected for us to use by the FSC. Sorry. So that is something else that has to be taken into consideration with the timescale. It was nice speaking to you today. Hopefully I've covered most of what I would look at in a renewal, and if you know, obviously want to delve further into what I've come up with, then we can discuss it in an interview. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.